Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, it is Monday afternoon, Monday, February the 20th. Monday, all day long Monday. And Boomer's on the board. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
How are you?
It's Monday. But it is beautiful outside. I'm in short sleeves. I cannot complain.
It feels like spring out there.
I know.
Just never mind the fact that I got up Saturday morning and it was 27 degrees.
Oh. It was Saturday was just I don't know why
I keep acting incredulous. I've lived in Alabama most of my life. You don't like the weather 10 minutes. Just wait 10 minutes, it'll change. But anyway, did you have a good weekend?
I had a great weekend, and on Saturday, we, as a Right Life Podcast, got to interview Mr. Phil Williams and his lovely wife, Charlene, and it was amazing.
Let's be honest. You actually interviewed Charlene, and I was just there.
just like I let McQueen just do her thing.
That's
and
right.
I'm just there.
No, we had the best time with you guys. So you're going to release that when?
Wednesday? On Wednesday. It'll be released on Wednesday. So y'all got to check it out. It's some great stories and just some behind the scenes of Rightside and some life lessons from Phil and Charlene.
It was good.
It was great.
We had the best time.
It was so much fun.
All right. Wait, listen, we got a full show for you. Lots of stuff laid on. So 3 o'clock today, Barry Matson, who is the head governmental affairs guy for the Alabama District Attorneys Association, he's going to be on with us to talk about fentanyl and some updates on what's happening with the prison release thing. So yeah, Barry Matson, he's been on the show before, extremely knowledgeable. When he represents all of the district attorneys across the entire state. And so yeah, Barry will be back on at 3 o'clock today to talk about fentanyl especially. So there's that. And then 3:30, there's a crazy story that came out on 1819 News today. I don't know if y'all saw it or not. If you didn't, you need to. And go ahead and, recognize there might be some language in it that you're not as accustomed to. But they got apparently somebody leaked a recording of Montgomery's liberal mayor, Stephen Reed, just going on a profanity-laced rant about why he doesn't need the black vote and why, and just on and on and on. I'm like, oh, good gosh, things that should never be said, period, much less in the day when you can be recorded. But that'll be 3 o'clock. We're going to talk to Craig Monger from 3:30, Craig Monger from 1819 News, who got that story and put it out first thing this morning. You might want to check that out in advance to get a better on what's happening. So there's that. And then I got a triple dipper full of stuff, so boom shakalaka, hit it.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you have got to know as we run today's show. So yeah, fighting fentanyl is number 1. Fighting fentanyl. And it's a fight, y'all. So one of the number 1 killers in America now is one drug coming across the southern border. We're going to talk about it again in depth. We're going to give you some latest updates, some things that have happened even in the state of Alabama. And then we're going to talk to Barry Matson, the head of the DA's Association, at 3 o'clock. So you're going to want to hear that. That's fighting fentanyl, number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, culture wars. I didn't get to it on Friday, so I held on to it because it's interesting to me to watch how we talk about things like, fighting for policy and all the things that happen in fiscal issues. But there's a whole aspect of public policy that has become more and more called culture wars. And that's when you wind up having those things that people care about that are more social in nature and how they're affecting society. And what are we doing to fight? And oh, by the way, are any politicians losing their job finally because of wokeness? Yeah, we'll talk about it. Number 2 on the Triple Dipper, culture wars. And then number 3, every once in a while, I got to update you on what's happening back home. All right, so we're gonna step back and do an episode of home fries. So remember, we got to find that sizzling home fries sound effect for that one too. He's making a note to himself right now. Got to find those sizzling home fries. But yeah, home fries, number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All Stuff Alabama. We'll lay it out for you and tell you what's happening across the entire state with your U.S. delegation in D.C. and yada yada. So home fries, number 3 on the Triple Dipper. Well, let me jump over to my comments here and open the show with my monologue. So I'll just open with this sentence, this statement, this sort of philosophical standpoint. You never really know who's living down the street from you. I mean, you don't. Sometimes you find out, you're like, wow, who did? Right there on our street? Every once in a while, you get one of those insider's glimpses to the fact that the extraordinary events of life were accomplished by the ordinary men and women who live around us, and we never even knew it. I mean, did you see the movie Sandlot? If you saw Sandlot, Boomer's shaking his head, what a great movie. Classic tale of growing up in suburban 1960s America with kids playing Sandlot baseball. So many one-liners. You're killing me, Smalls. I mean, there was a life lesson in every single episode, it seemed like. But then there was that major life lesson that sort of capped off the movie. When the scary old man in the rundown house with the big dog turned out to be the hero of the early days of baseball. And eventually he was regaling the kids who had been scared of him before of his time with Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio. It's the movie version of never really knowing who lives down the street from you. Well, in my own life, I think I've told you before about the man who used to live in my neighborhood till just a few years ago, a Medal of Honor winner, whose deeds in Korea are legendary, but who went on from there to be one of the founders of the U.S. Army Special Forces. He was one of the first commandants of the Special Warfare Center at Fort Bragg, and the Army Combat Diver School is named after him. Before I left for my first tour overseas, he came to see me and he gave me some simple and direct advice about taking care of my men down range that I've never forgotten. His multiple tours in Vietnam, they were no less legendary, and I heard men at a ceremony who came from thousands of miles away to talk about what it was like to serve under him. And there are some who say that the movie Apocalypse Now was even based in part on him. I mean, who knows? What I do know is this: he was my neighbor. He lived in a quiet cul-de-sac in Gadsden, Alabama. Who knew? Well, some years ago, my wife and I, we were looking for a house for her parents. They've since passed away, but at the time we were looking for them to live near us, and so we were on the hunt for a new home. And during the hunt, we visited one small corner house in the same neighborhood they wound up living in. Just a small piece of quiet suburbia. But as we looked at the house, I couldn't help but notice there was some military memorabilia on the wall, so I wandered over to take a look. And I was shocked by what I found. It turns out that when the B-29 superfortress named the Enola Gay dropped the first atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end World War II, that there were actually two B-29s on that mission. One was the Enola Gay, the one everybody knows about. But the other B-29 flew an hour ahead, by itself, to make sure that the targets were clear for the most significant bombing mission in the history of the world. And the young pilot of that lead B-29 retired to a quiet lot in northeast Alabama right down the road from where I'm talking right now. Amazing. I may have mentioned to you, too, before about the older gentleman who befriended Charlene and I some years ago. He was an interesting man, had a big old belly and a good laugh and a voice like a character from Gone with the Wind, who always had an unlit corncob pipe in his mouth. He called it my pacifier. What I didn't know until a bit later was that he was one of the engineers who helped develop rolled aluminum right as World War II was getting started. And his inventions, they got him sent home from the war because he was deemed too important to the war effort for deployment. Virtually every plane, ship, and military hardware of every type used some aspect of his pioneering efforts in steel and aluminum manufacturing. And he was just an older man at my church, living down the way a bit. See, I'm mindful of folks like this because just this past weekend, I spoke at the funeral of my friend Alex. I told his wife and family and friends the very same thing. I started off by saying you just never know who's living down the street from you. I knew Alex for a number of years, but his life was like peeling back an onion with every layer showing a new layer. So before speaking, I asked his wife if I could get some of his military records to review just to help me with the details. And what I got was a whole load of paperwork that really helped me to better see a life that had so many intricacies. In the middle of it all, in the middle of all that paper, was a progress report from his time as a high school student. I don't know why he kept it. Maybe because it showed that his teachers thought very little of him when he was 15, with his PE teacher failing him and writing specifically that he had a bad attitude, he taught back off, and he was really in need of what he called some kind of outside help. Well, a few years later, that 15-year-old kid was a Green Beret working secret missions in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia. And after 7 years as a decorated Green Beret, my friend Alex decided to get out of the Army and join the Navy, at which point he became a signal intelligence specialist working in special projects that flew low-level intel gathering missions over hostile waters. And my friend Alex was directly involved in helping to locate a ship called the SS Mayaguez, a U.S. ship that had been seized by the Khmer Rouge in 1975. It resulted in a major international incident, a major combat rescue operation. So, yeah, this one guy received a Cambodian National Defense Medal for his time in the Army Special Forces and a meritorious unit citation for his time helping save lives in the Navy. Not bad for a kid whose PE teacher had written him off when he was 15. And he lived on a quiet street in a normal neighborhood with none of his neighbors really even knowing what he'd done. Like I said, you never really know who's living down the street from you. And I know that not everyone has a secret story of heroism or medals tucked away in a box, but I guarantee you there's folks in our sphere every day that we will be fascinated by or learn from or just enjoy hearing more about if we just took the time. Hebrews 13:2 tells us, quote, "Do not forget or neglect or refuse to extend hospitality to strangers, being friendly, cordial, and gracious, sharing the comforts of your home and doing your part generously, for through it, some have entertained angels without even knowing it." You see, basically that's saying that my point is valid. You have no idea sometimes who lives down the street or shops at the same grocery store or goes to your church. I wish personally that I had known more about my friend Alex's life before he was gone. I mean, that guy, he had to have some great stories. But more than that, I'm betting that he had some life lessons, some good laughs, some crazy experiences, and I'm wishing now that I'd been more intentional in getting to them. I'm not trying to get all mushy here. What I'm saying is this: there are folks all around us, especially in the generation maybe just above yours. They've got stories, man. They got some life, and they know a bit about how to do life. And it would behoove us to remember that they might live down the street from us for a reason. So maybe just take a pause in all your busyness, ask them a question, and then just sit back and see what comes. You never know who's living down the street from you. And like Hebrews said, some have entertained angels unawares. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Yeah, Alex was a cool guy. He really was. Did some amazing things. Wounded in action multiple times, you know. Had stories just to go on and on and on. And I'll tell you, I wish now that I'd spent more time just gleaning those stories, because I'm pretty sure it could have made a book. But folks, you have no idea who's living right down the road. Go find out. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, okay, let's go ahead and get to the big doings of the day. Big doings here. Big doings is Boomer Bud got drafted in Little League.
Oh, he did get drafted. He is now a Tiger. I don't know what the name of them are. Maybe it's just the Tigers.
The Tigers.
The Tigers.
He's playing for the Tigers.
Playing for the Tigers.
Does he have a position, or does he just on the Tigers team?
He's just on the Tiger team right now. I'm sure they'll figure out where he needs to be.
I saw that video of him during tryouts. That little dude's fast.
He's like lightning fast. So, and he loves it too. And he's like, I'm fast. Watch this, Dad.
That's awesome.
So it's a blast. We're excited to get started with our with all of our fun baseball endeavors.
Well, you got to make sure that his adopted aunt and uncle Charlene and Phil know the deal.
We'll get the schedule out. Because he'll be traveling. I'm not just kidding. He'll be all in the same spot. Hopefully, at the same time.
That's good, man. That's good. Hey, by the way, where are we at right now in the podcast? How many downloads? I mean, we were kicking like 117,000 by Friday, weren't we? Where are we at right now?
Oh man, we're at 118.5.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, we're pushing 120. So all right, so yeah, here's the deal, y'all. The Right Side podcast. So every day we do the show, and then we post it afterwards, and you can get it in segments, or you can get the full show. And it's just major cool watching this thing kind of unfold. But yeah, we've got the ability right now to see live stream of the show daily. You can go to www.rightsideradio.org. We've also got the show podcasted thereafter, which is now pushing 118,000 downloads. Would you say 117.5-ish?
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah, 118.5. So we're going to be at 120 by the end of the week.
Oh, good Lord! All right, there's that. And then, of course, we have Boomer and McQueen have the Right Life podcast, which comes out also. Every bit of this is there. Y'all can grab it. You can re-listen to a piece if you wanted to. You can send a segment to a friend if you want them to hear it. You can also just download it so that you can listen to it while you drive. All said and done, go to any podcasting format. You can type in Right Side Radio or The Right Life, either one of those, and you'll find them. And I would appreciate if you would subscribe to them and, leave a little rating or a comment if you want to, as long as it's a nice one, by the way. We don't want your mean comments because we have thin skin around here. No. But anyway, yeah, check them out. There's a lot of other stuff on our website, too, I will point out, rightsideradio.org. You can live stream the show every day. I mean, you can see inside the studio as we're doing our thing. And you can also, by the way, catch our recommended reading list, the photo gallery, all kinds of things that are out there about the show. Even the Right Side store, where if you want to get a coffee mug, a T-shirt, or some Right Side socks, you can get those at the Right Side store. So, yeah, just check it out, rightsideradio.org. And I'm going to go over to the text line. By the way, the text line's open. You want to text in, we'll take it. You're also welcome to call in, 833-687-4448. Got a great text, Jamie from Hartselle. So Jamie from Hartselle just texted in a minute ago. Today being the 20th of February, he says, yesterday, 78 years ago, my dad came ashore at Iwo Jima. He landed in the third wave on Red Beach 2 in the 35-day battle. 6,821 Marines, sailors, and Army Air Corps were KIA. 19,000 were WIA. Right at 200 Japanese soldiers remained alive out of the estimated 22,000 prior to the invasion. And the last two Japanese to surrender did so on January 6, 1949, 4 years after the victory. That's amazing when you get down to it. But that's a legendary battle. And Jamie, so first of all, Jamie, thanks for your dad's service very much. And then I'll also tell you, too, my wife's grandfather was on Iwo Jima. And I believe he was also a part of, was he with, I got to look back and see where he was. I tried to send you the picture. I've actually got a picture of him. Believe it or not, a combat camera was on the beach. And there's a book that was made by the Marine Corps as a government-issued book. And lo and behold, there's a picture of her grandfather struggling through that black volcanic sand on Iwo Jima. So if I can get it to post up, Jamie, I'll send you a copy of it. I'm looking at it right now, but I can't get it to post. Anyway, thanks for your father's service. Very mindful. Iwo Jima, 78 years ago yesterday. Brian from Huntsville. Yeah. So that 1819 story that we're going to talk about a little bit later, he says it has a warning on it, warning adult language regarding the Montgomery mayor. He said that's teenage gutter language, not adult language. That's a great point. But yeah, that story is just kind of crazy. And especially crazy when you base it off of what he sounds like when he's trying to be out there in the public eye. Didn't know he was being recorded on this one. Apparently someone inside is tired of the way he acts, and he literally is just cussing about he doesn't even. He's a black man. He's saying, I don't even need the black vote. Don't even need it at all. Don't you know who I am? And just going on and talking about all the things that you shouldn't say as a public official, and it got caught. So we'll talk to Craig Monger later in the show about his article on that recording that got leaked out about the mayor of Montgomery. All right, listen, we're going to take a break. We'll come right back, jump into the first part of the Triple Dipper, fighting fentanyl. Got some news for you. I'll share it when we get back. Y'all stay tuned. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right, covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the great state of Alabama. I'm talking about way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back to gassed parts of Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, thrown in just for good measure. So number one of the Triple Dipper, fighting fentanyl. This is a scourge, by the way. It's every once in a while you can find a thing that you can actually you can put your hands on it. And if you could just change that one thing, you could actually change something in our society. I mean, sometimes it's all out there like, you just know people need to know the Lord or that we've got to do something with fiscal policy. And it all sounds so big and esoteric. You're wondering, how do you get that thing out there? And how about this? What if we could just stop fentanyl from coming across the southern border? What would it do? I'm going to tell you right now. It would save 100,000 lives. No kidding. How's that for a result? Can you imagine? If I were president of the United States, which I ain't, but if I were president of the United States, I'd be looking around going, why don't we just do this one thing? How about this? Let's make it a mission that we're going to stop fentanyl. I don't mean like make a little comment in my State of the Union speech where I say, it is time for us to take this seriously. No, that's just lame. How about, all right, fellas, here's the deal. We're going to stop fentanyl, and we're going to stop it hard, and we're going to stop it fast, and we're going to tell the Mexican government here's how it's going to be, and then we're going to make sure that China understands, too, that if we start finding those connections, we're going to sink them as they try to sail them over. How about this? If Mexico won't control the border labs, then maybe it's time for us to take military action, because 100,000 deaths in 1 year from fentanyl overdose, and the vast preponderance of that comes across the southern border. All right, Phil, are you getting a little extreme? Have you had too much coffee? No more caffeine for you. No, I'm just being serious. Here's the deal. We've got an opportunity to save 100,000 lives. How about somebody man up and do it? I'm just going to hazard the guess that if we could find a drug lab, that we could put a Tomahawk missile in the middle of it pretty darn quick. And I understand. I understand what that means. I understand. Before y'all start, Phil, you're a warmonger. No, I'm not. I'm talking about saving 100,000 American lives. I'm just saying we're at that point where this is truly a scourge on our society that has gone way beyond something that's like, well, it's just, it's time for us to consider the war on drugs. No. Stop fentanyl. One thing. And then if we do, there'll be other things in the future that, will rise up to replace it, or they'll find other ways to try and get it in. I get it. They will. They always do. But this one, and you know what it's doing, and you know where it's coming from. The vast preponderance of fentanyl comes across the southern border. The vast majority of the precursor for it comes from China to Mexico. And you know what? The drug cartels, they are thumbing their nose at us right now. We are seizing fentanyl in quantities enough to kill every single American twice. And that's just what we're seizing. And yet we're still seeing 100,000 overdose deaths related to fentanyl. So story here, 1819 News had one story that came out just, 2 days ago. U.S. Senator Katie Britt just got a major position. So Senator Britt is now the ranking member of the Homeland Security Subcommittee of the Senate Appropriations Committee. So what that means is she's in a position of influence on issues of Homeland Security. So she now has joined in what they call several legislative efforts to combat illegal immigration and trafficking. So there's a bill being floated right now by Marco Rubio. It's called the No Coyote Cash Act. It would amend the Immigration Nationality Act. It would include a criminal penalty and a ground of removability, which means, I believe, actual cutting off of assets for the financing of any unlawful entry. So in other words, it's a way to get at the thing that drives the cartels is money. They could care less about people's lives. They're not trying to help people to get to a better life in America. No, they're exploiting them. They're human traffickers. They're trying to literally take fentanyl across the border, not because somebody needs it for their medication. They could give a rat's hind end about, how many people die from fentanyl overdose as long as they get paid before they die. Here's a quote from Britt's office. She says, With a record number of Americans dying from fentanyl poisoning, record deaths among migrants attempting to cross the border, record profits for the cartels, and a record amount of people on the terrorism watch list apprehended at the border, there's no doubt we have a crisis unlike which we've ever seen. This bill, the one I mentioned a minute ago, would protect vulnerable women, children, and men from being exploited by dangerous criminals while also helping stem the tide of illegal aliens. Or she calls them illegal immigrants, immigrants illegally flooding across our border. Representative Barry Moore, who's also been on the show several times, Congressman Moore says that we have seen a 9-fold increase in fentanyl being seized since 2018. 9-fold. Okay, they only do this because it's a money-making venture. If we're seeing a 9-fold increase just in seizures, no telling what already got through. And oh, by the way, that means it's a lucrative business for them, and they're going to keep on doing it. Congressman Moore said since July of last year, border seizures of fentanyl have averaged 2,200 pounds a month. A month. That's just what they seized. So basically, they're confiscating more fentanyl per month now than they did in all of 2018. The heck? And he says basically, as a result of our porous southern border, fentanyl is now killing an estimated 196 Americans per day. Per day. Well, let's bring that home a little bit. So WBRC, Right Chonder, in the Birmingham listening area. Right Chonder, Birmingham story on WBRC dated January 24th. So we're at what, 3 weeks ago, 3.5. Says more than 300 Jefferson County deaths were linked to fentanyl in 2022. That's right here at home. That's just in one county. Of our 67 counties, of course, Birmingham being or Jefferson County being the most populous, more than 300 Jefferson County deaths were linked to fentanyl in 2022 alone. Says officials say that more people are dying from opioid overdoses than car accidents or gun crime. Can you imagine? More people dying from opioid overdoses than car accidents in Jefferson County. I mean, think about that. Aside from how many roads pass through there with all the municipalities, Birmingham, Mountain Brook, Hoover, Vestavia, Bessemer, head on over to West Birmingham, all the roads, but then you've got the interstates, the major intersections of I-20, I-59, I-65, all coming through that area, not to mention the state highways. And despite that level of traffic, opioid deaths is more than automobile accidents in Jefferson County. The coroner is a guy named Bill Yates for Jefferson County. He said 417 people died from opioid overdoses last year. Most of them were fentanyl. Of the 417 overdoses in 2022, he said 339 have been certified as a direct result of fentanyl. Can you imagine? All right, so let's do the math here. If we could stop fentanyl at the border, then last year in Jefferson County, Alabama alone, 339 people might not have died. I mean, run these numbers in your head and try to tell me why we're not putting a Tomahawk missile into drug labs in Mexico. That's a horrible statistic. That is one county in one state where 339 people died because of one drug, and we know where it comes from, and we know where the elements to make it come from. So what's happening right now is they're mixing it with everything in the world. And they're actually making pills that look like prescription drugs. They literally make pills that look like prescriptions. And then there are people who are desperate to get their prescriptions who buy them online or from a friend, and they don't realize what they got was a fentanyl substitute. Story here from AL.com, which is a bit of a jackleg story, to be honest with you. AL.com, dated February 16th, so 4 days ago, says a Mobile County Sheriff's deputy was reportedly taken to a local hospital after he collapsed when he was exposed to fentanyl while searching a wanted suspect's vehicle. He was given naloxone, which is a drug used to counter the effects of opioids. He's in stable condition. But then they throw this in there. Some experts are skeptical of law enforcement accounts of officer overdoses, with some pointing out to the New York Times that fentanyl overdose only occurs through snorting, shooting up, or ingesting the drug, not from secondhand exposure. Oh, I guess the officer just lied. I guess they had to administer naloxone because he was faking it. Because, you got to do it for, YouTube, I guess. What a stupid thing to put in your article. Howard Koplowitz from AL.com. You got a Mobile County Sheriff's deputy who is doing his duty, who is collapsing because of exposure to fentanyl, apparently certified exposure to fentanyl, had to be given a counter narcotic. He's in stable condition in the hospital. But Howard Koplowitz from AL.com, he wants to write that, well, you know, some are skeptical of law enforcement's claims of officer overdoses because, you know, that's not how it really works. Get out there on the street, Howard. Do a ride-along someday and just see how life really works. I'm just saying. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back from this, let's start talking about stats. Where are we in fentanyl deaths, in fentanyl actions, and in things that are happening around the nation? And then top of the hour, we got Barry Mattson from the Alabama District Attorneys Association. And let me tell you, I got one story here. Those of you veterans in the audience, it's hitting our military pretty hard too. We'll talk about it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Got some responses from folks here online with regards to that knucklehead statement that Howard Koplowitz, the author of the AL.com article, threw in there about, some are disputing whether or not these law enforcement cases of overdosing is real. What a stupid thing to say. Jeremy from Huntsville texted in and said fentanyl is 100% transdermal or absorbed through the skin. I agree with you. I've heard the same thing. Thanks, man. Bruce from Hazel Green, he says they don't want to stop the drugs. They don't want to fix it. They want large numbers of those to die off. I hope that's not true, but the reality is I know this. The cartels could care less. I had one other. Where'd it go? Shoot. Somebody else had texted in saying that yes, the fentanyl is absolutely potentially transmitted through the skin. So I had two people texting in the same thing. Anyway, listen, it's a heck of a thing to be a law enforcement officer, have to make a stop. Right now, I mean, I can remember when for a while there, meth labs were the thing, and they had mobile meth labs, people making them in Coke bottles in their car. And just as a police officer, when you have to raid a hotel room at a seedy, flea bag motel and find out that there's a drug lab in there, you gotta literally be suited up. You got to bring in the hazmat, and fentanyl. In fact, Barry Matson, the guy who's coming on at 3:00, I remember him speaking when I was still in the state Senate before fentanyl became everything that we know of it today. He was talking about fentanyl being something that is literally able to kill everyone in the room. He said, and we were in a big room with probably 100 people in attendance at a hearing we had before the state Senate, and he was saying, if I had just enough it takes to put on the tip of my pinky, that amount could probably kill everybody in this room. And we're all like, what? And it's true. It's absolutely potent and lethal. So there's a fact checker. Now there has been a little bit of good news, been a slight downward trend. And one fact checker I've got here that came out in the last few days is disputing the notion that it's the number one killer of people between the ages of 18 to 45. Okay, it only killed 100,000 people, but maybe it's not the number one. Anyway, it points out here that 71,000 people died from overdosing on synthetic opioids like fentanyl in the year 2021. This article came out a couple of days ago, by the way, up from almost 58,000 in 2020. According to the CDC, in comparison, it says the CDC estimates that in 2020, almost 700,000 people died from heart disease. Okay. Wow. Well, how many of them had fentanyl-induced heart attacks? How about that? But anyway, nonetheless, we are looking at lawmakers that are claiming that they're being told that fentanyl is the number one leading cause of death for adults, and there's time to do something about it. You know what? If it's only the third or fourth leading cause of death, we can't stop heart disease, but you can stop fentanyl. You may not be able to stop cancer, but by God, you can stop fentanyl. It just takes the want to. That's where we are. It just takes the want to. It just takes literally saying enough is enough and unleash the hounds. I'm just saying, if we've got people right now on the ground, DEA and ATF guys working across the border, and they know where a drug lab is, that thing may have to blow up in the dark of night. I'm okay with that because 100,000 people died in the United States last year. Here's a story, U.S. News, dated February 15th this year. Recent data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention points to a sustained dip in overall drug overdoses. That's good. Not much, but it's down some. It says, according to provisional counts of reported deaths from the CDC's vital statistics, more than 100,500 people in the United States died due to drug overdoses in the 12-month period of September of 21 through October 22. That's down 7.2%. Yay! But when you look at those, how many of them had fentanyl attached to them? You are talking about an epidemic. You want to talk about an epidemic? This is it's a man-made epidemic. When you've got a 3.2% decline, yay! That's not enough. It says overdose deaths in the U.S. rose dramatically during the first 2 years of COVID, increasing by more than 50% from around 73,000 in January of 20 to 110,000 in early 2022. And one of the states that had a spike, Alabama. Well, it says that fentanyl overdoses in the U.S. doubled between 2019 to 2021. COVID-19 and unintentional injuries were also included in things that cause deaths, but that fentanyl is considered one of those man-made deaths that could be stopped if we just took the right measures. How about this in our military? Story here, February 16th, from an organization called Legion.org. Says fentanyl was involved in 88% of the deaths of service members who had OD'd on illicit drugs in 2021. That's a steep increase in the last 5 years. It says our military, according to Senator Edward Markey from Massachusetts, is not immune to the opioid epidemic. The DOD's latest report underscores the urgency of the moment. It says 5 years ago, the synthetic drug of fentanyl was the result of 36% of troop overdose deaths. Now it's 88%. From 2017 to 2021, a 4-year period, 15,000 service members overdosed on drugs and alcohol. That's drugs and alcohol. 332 of those died. More than half of those who died because of fentanyl. Members of our services. I get it. They were still doing something wrong. All I'm saying is, if you have more than half of 332, then you're looking at somewhere around 180, 160 who died because of fentanyl. You're looking at that statistic I showed you from, or a minute ago from Jefferson County. 339 people wouldn't have died if we could stop fentanyl. Well, I'm glad to see that some things are happening across the border. I'm pretty sure it happened to coincide with the fact that the Senate Foreign Relations Committee was holding a hearing on fentanyl overdoses. But here's a story from February 16th from CBS. Mexican soldiers seized more than 500,000 fentanyl pills in a raid. 500,000. 500,000 fentanyl pills in a raid on the largest synthetic drug lab found to date, the country's army announced on Wednesday. The Army said the outdoor lab was discovered in a place called Culiacan, which is in the Sinaloa district, Sinaloa state. Soldiers raided the lab and found 630,000, that's more than 500,000, that's a lot more than 500,000, 630,000 pills that appeared to contain synthetic opioid fentanyl pills. They were made to look like things like Xanax, Percocet, and oxycodone. And the DEA administrator says there's an absolute direct relationship between the Chinese chemical companies and the criminal cartels in Mexico. Yeah. How about this? The bust came on the same day the Senate was holding hearings. Ha! Coincidence? I think not. Coming right back, Barry Mattson, Alabama District Attorneys Association, will get his thoughts. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And like that dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, we're in number one of the Triple Dipper right now. Fighting fentanyl is what I'm calling it. And we've been just talking for the last half hour about some of the latest statistics, which are pretty sobering. Regarding fentanyl and the fact that it comes across our southern border just in droves, precursors coming from China. Raven from Russellville on our text line just said, we can use a $400,000 missile to shut down a $12 balloon, but we can't spare any for fentanyl. What? And he's got a point. On the phone right now is Barry Mattson. Barry's the Deputy Director of the Office of Prosecution Services and the Alabama District Attorneys Association. He's got a long career as a prosecutor, and he's been on the show once before for this very topic. We thought we'd get an update and just give him a holler, and he agreed to come on the show today. So, my friend Barry Mattson, how you doing, man?
How you doing, Phil? Good to be on your radio show. Appreciate you having me.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you and what you do. So we had one of your district attorneys on the other day, Jody Willoughby from Etowah County, has been on the show most recently. But listen, let me ask you, Barry, straight up, fentanyl. Last time you and I talked, it was a scourge. I feel like the statistics have gotten worse. What are you guys seeing as DAs right now out there in the field?
Phil, it'll get worse before it ever gets better. I'm really frightened about the prospects of what's coming in the future. As I've said several times, I think it's a weapon of mass destruction. I think it takes a very little bit of fentanyl to kill a lot of people, and I'm very concerned about it. We have two foreign nations, China and Mexico, that and the cartels, make no mistake about it, cartels run Mexico. They're entrenched in all levels of government, state and local and federal. And those two, with the precursors from China and the manufacturing and smuggling from the cartels into our country, it's killing thousands and thousands of Americans and Alabamians a day. I mean, it's frightening, but what we're seeing across our country, and it threatens people who aren't taking the drug, who aren't addicts, law enforcement, first responders, innocent people that come across the drug. You can touch it, and it can go in through your pores of your skin, and you can overdose. There's so many ways it can hurt really unsuspecting people as well.
Well, and I made the point, Barry, earlier that there are things that are major statistics like cancer or heart disease, and you can't just stop those. I mean, you can do things to mitigate. You can try to help, but there's this one thing that's killing upwards of 100,000 people a year. It's one drug, and it comes mostly from one place, and it's fentanyl. Like, for instance, a story that I've got that I quoted earlier before you came on. Apparently, last year alone, there were 339 fentanyl overdose deaths in Jefferson County, Alabama alone. That's 339 people that could have been saved if we could just stanch the flow of fentanyl into our country.
And it seems to be that our federal government just ignores this. They know where it's coming from. They know how it comes in. They publish a threat assessment every year. It's mapped. I've been down there with federal officers, and meth is still the largest, most impactful drug in our country, but meth is really more of a slow death. It's sad to say it that way, but it really is. Fentanyl is the acute problem. If you take it once, you can die from it immediately. But we know where it's coming from. We know where the precursors, how they're getting in, and yet we're doing nothing about it. If there was a bomb that went off and killed that many people in Birmingham last week, you can bet it would get much more attention. It'd be a mass death, but we just seem to write off these folks. And it's sad because every life has value, and it's terrible what's happening to our country. In 2020, I read recently that Alabama, for the first time with COVID and overdose deaths, had more people die than we had births. We were the first time in recorded history
Wow.
that we were upside down in births and deaths in 2020.
Wow, that's sobering. Well, let me ask you this, Barry. I mean, so is there anything you guys, and you and I first met when I was in the legislature, and you would come over to the State House and help with issues that the district attorneys cared about. Sometimes it'd be things on criminal law, otherwise at times it'd be penalties. Is there anything that you guys are looking at right now that the legislature may be considering that relates to this fentanyl crisis?
We are, and Matt Simpson has the bill. We'll have a couple more, I think, pretty soon. Spoken with the Speaker and Senator Reid, the leadership, and they are very supportive of a couple of initiatives that we have. One would be looking at a first responder, how first responders are injured as being exposed to fentanyl. Anybody selling or manufacturing or trafficking in fentanyl, they know the dangers. They know how deadly it is. For listeners, the equivalent of 3 grains of salt. If you put 3 grains of salt on a plate, that much fentanyl can kill you. That's how much little it takes. And so to kill one person. So that we're looking at legislation that would address when first responders are injured, it being exposed to fentanyl. We're looking at a homicide death as far as felony murder, where if you sell or you market fentanyl, knowing how deadly it is, and cause a death, that we can charge that death. And then we made fentanyl trafficking a few years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, before we knew this was coming. And in Alabama, we had possession of fentanyl, which is a D felony, it's a small offense, 1 to 5. And we had trafficking in every other drug, cocaine, heroin, you name it. But we didn't have a trafficking statute in fentanyl. So you could have a tractor-trailer load or a thimble full, and it was the same offense. So we were able to get it was hard, but we got a trafficking statute about 3 or 4 years ago. But we did not get any the mandatory minimums that are the same on other drugs. Cocaine, heroin have a minimum of 3 on the low end of the weight, and it goes on up as higher the weight is. But in Alabama, now currently trafficking has no mandatory minimum sentence. It's a Class A, so it's 10 and up.
Okay.
As far as sentencing. So we're looking at that as well. That bill is already filed. I think that's HB1.
Well, so let me add, and I'm glad to hear it's already pre-filed then, HB1. That's great. So, but let me ask you too, Barry, is there a sort of a center of gravity in Alabama? I mean, I hear the stats on Jefferson County, but that's one of 67 counties. Is Jefferson County the center of gravity for fentanyl, or are all the counties seeing the same level of per capita exposure right now?
I think every county's seeing it. This knows no barriers. You'll see drugs when they come onto a scene. They'll impact either a rural or an urban population, or they'll impact higher income. Maybe it's more expensive, or sometimes it splits on some. Even in racial lines, you see early on with meth and crack cocaine, you saw some of that. But then the lines blur. All those drugs tend to now. Meth is displaced crack cocaine. Meth is urban, rural, large county, small county. That's the amphetamine. That's the stimulant of choice on the streets right now. It's methamphetamine, and it's also made in Mexico in super labs. So that's coming in as well from the same cartels. Fentanyl really is hitting every community, and you see it where the person is either buying heroin and they don't know it's laced, or they're buying fentanyl intentionally, or we're seeing it in online sales of other drugs. Like people think they're buying prescription drugs, getting it at low cost online from some source. And in those, we're seeing other drugs mixed in, sometimes fentanyl, because it'll have a psychoactive impact on the user, and they think, oh, this is doing what it's supposed to do. And quite often, we see fentanyl laced into those drugs as well, where people buy prescription drugs online from non-reputable sources that they think they can trust, but they can't.
It's amazing. I mean, it really is. And the first time I ever really became aware of this, and this has been some years ago, so I've been out of the legislature now for over 4 years, but I was in a Senate hearing, and you were testifying we had the big briefing room downstairs on the first floor, and I believe you said at the time, in this room, which probably had 100 people in it, you said if I had just enough to cover the tip of my pinky, I could kill everybody in this room with fentanyl. And that's the first time I'd ever become aware of this scourge, which has now been killing hundreds of thousands of people across the nation.
And I'm afraid it's not going to get the attention that it deserves until we have a mass casualty. And you know, the cartels could overdose a batch of heroin that's coming in, and in the blink of an eye, we could have thousands of deaths across our country, above and beyond what we're having now. And they know that. And sadly, you know, dealers will intentionally overdose sometimes some of their users for whatever sick marketing purposes they may, you know, choose to do that. But I'm afraid it's going to take something like that. I'm fearful of that, but I'm afraid it's going to.
I mean, and I guess with about a minute left to go here, Barry, and I know this is outside of your bailiwick, but do you ever hear of anything like the actual Department of Defense getting involved in trying to stop the flow of fentanyl across the southern border?
Well, you know, I thought in all my years in law enforcement, I thought that DEA had a greater presence in country, in Mexico, than they do, until I went down a couple of years ago with DEA and some other folks from our small group from our state. We went down, actually went to Mexico City, took a Black Hawk out to southern Mexico in Culiacan in Sinaloa area, where a large, like a 20-acre meth lab had been seized. And I found out that there's really less than a handful of in-country DEA agents in Mexico, and depending on the cooperation of their federal government, which now is zero, they're able to do some type of interdiction in that process. But there is virtually no cooperation with the Mexican government because that's not what the cartels want. And so we don't have any military or DEA presence in Mexico like we would in other countries. It's pretty shocking. But the Department of Defense certainly could target those. They should label the cartels a terrorist organization, and that would change the whole dynamics of this process. I can bet you if ISIS was killing Americans at the rate the cartels were and China importers were, it would happen in a heartbeat.
Well, I agree. I agree, and I'm ready to see a change. But Barry Matson, appreciate what you do. Thanks for representing district attorneys across the entire state of Alabama, and let's get you back on again sometime soon, all right?
I appreciate it. It's an honor being on your program. You're a good friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Appreciate you. All right, Boomer, take us to a break. We'll come right back and wrap this up. Fighting fentanyl. I mean, it's. I don't want to call it discouraging. The encouraging side of this is you can see it. You know what the resolution can be. It's not like we're trying to fight this, unknown, invisible source of angst. No, it's a thing, and you know where it comes from. We'll talk about it when we get back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. We had a number of people that kicked in some texts on the fentanyl issue. Brian from Huntsville says, Chinese balloons loaded with fentanyl just waiting to be shot down. It's a scary thought, though. I mean, actually. TL from Huntsville sent me a link to another about police having to save one of their fellow officers during a fentanyl overstop or fentanyl traffic stop in Florida. John from Huntsville saw something on PBS that was showing how cooking fentanyl is so dangerous that many of the Mexicans that are cooking it actually die. I'm sure that's true. Wow. I mean, it's not like they care about the people that are being trafficked or the drugs that are being trafficked or the people that are on the other side of it. They certainly don't care about the people that manufacture it. All they care about is the bottom line. Give me the next buck and let's make some more. Jerry from Meridianville, all these people who are disputing fentanyl death rates are the same people who say we need gun control. That's a great point. Raven from Russellville, I read it earlier, but I'll read it again. He says, we can use a $400,000 missile to shoot down a $12 balloon, but we can't spare any on fentanyl? What? Dustin from Hazel Green, I apologize. He wanted me to ask about something called carfentanil, and I'm not sure what all that is, but he points out, Dustin does, that for those, that article by Howard Koplowitz at AL.com, who took issue with some say that maybe these overdose, being claimed by law enforcement are not accurate because, it's not transmitted through the skin. He points out they make fentanyl patches for pain management. So that means it's transdermal. And that's a great point. Justin from Brownsboro. I forgot where'd he go? Here he goes. So I know someone prescribed fentanyl legitimately. It was a transdermal patch that supplied a slow release. And they said that was a pretty high dose. They had to stop at all other narcotic meds while they were receiving it. Yeah, it's just because contraindications. It can clash with other things. I don't know. I mean, your thoughts, Boomer, but the reality is we got a mess.
It's a complete mess. And like you were saying earlier, with the 100,000 deaths, how is it not seen as a huge deal and something that needs to be taken care of?
Yeah, what was it Barry Matson said a moment ago? If ISIS killed that many people, we'd be going to war.
Right. Like, come on. And this is something that we can help stop.
We see, we know it.
Right.
I mean, finding the drug lab might be a thing. I get it. They hide them in the jungles. They hide them sometimes in urban environments. But I can remember being in Baghdad, and we were doing it was my last major op. We did a big cordon search in an area called, it was part of Adamiyah and part of Sadr City. Mm. It was a really bad area. But what was amazing to me, it was a part that I had not been in to that point. Mm-hmm. And there was one building, the ruins of one building, that were right next to a school. We had basically put a JDAM missile straight down the pipe of that building, took out that building because it was a Ba'ath Party headquarters building, and everything around it was still standing.
Wow.
We have the capability to do precision targeting of these drug labs should we choose to do so. Now, I get it. You're going into a sovereign country. Mexico, for all its warts and blemishes, is still a sovereign country. But right now you got 100,000 Americans dying. It's time for someone to look at Mexico and say, you know what? Here's the deal. President Obrador, here's the deal. Nothing but love for you and all that. You're my southern, border guy, but you don't have any control over the Sinaloa cartel and none of the others. So here's the thing. If we find a drug lab, we're going to destroy it. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
If we can see it, if we can get intel on the ground, and by the way, we can get intel on the ground, and this is a thing. What was that book by Tom Clancy? Oh, gosh, it was a great book. Introduced some of his major characters. Not the Sum of All Fears. I forgot which one it was. Clear and Present Danger. Clear and Present Danger by Tom Clancy was about the very same thing. Putting former Army intel or recon guys on the ground to gather the intelligence to laze the target and destroy the drug lab. It can happen.
Yeah.
It's possible. All right, listen, we're going to switch gears. We're going to go to number 2 in the Triple Dipper, home fries. We're going to talk about things that are happening around the state of Alabama, not the least of which is a freaky article that came out on 1819 News just today about a profanity-laced rant by the mayor of Montgomery claiming he doesn't even need the black vote. Wow. All right, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the great, beautiful state of Alabama. I'm talking about way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, or back from Tuscaloosa over to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. All right, we're going to go to the next topic on the Triple Dipper. I'm calling this one Home Fries. We do this periodically where I'll just have a series of stories. It's Alabama. Oh, that's a good Alabama story. Hey, that's another Alabama guy. And at some point I recognize I've got a whole segment I could do just on updating you on things happening here in the great state of Alabama. Some good, some bad, some just knowledge you got to know. So, yeah, that's where we are right now. Number 2 on the Triple Dipper, home fries. Well, right out the gate, this morning, I'm up early getting the show ready, and at like 5:30 this morning, I got the daily update from 1819 News, and the very first story was like a what? So yeah, headline, 1819 News, Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed, in an apparent profanity-laced rant on the black vote and other issues, saying, I don't blankety-blank have to get the blankety-blank black vote. Anyway, it's an awful thing. It's the kind of thing that never should be said, much less said as a politician about your constituents. The guy who wrote the article, Craig Monger, from 1819 News, I reached out this morning and said, Craig, can you come on? He said, yes, I can. So without further ado, from 1819 News, Craig Monger, how you doing, man?
Oh, I am doing just spectacular, Phil. How are you?
I'm good. Well, every once in a while a story comes along where you just read it and you just have to either roll your eyes or throw down some paper. I don't know. But how did this story come about? Where did y'all get these recordings?
Well, as far as the first recording came about, it was posted on a YouTube channel that was created just yesterday. I'm going out on a limb to say it was specifically created just for the purpose of releasing this video. The following two came from someone very, very close to the source of the person who actually recorded the video. I'm not at liberty to say now, although I anticipate I will be able to in the future. But I do know who recorded the audio. Like I said, I'm not at liberty to say that at the moment, but I got it through a sort of middleman from that, and it obviously was pretty inflammatory, and you can see why the person is wanting to maintain a bit of distance from this at the moment.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a headhunting operation going on inside the mayor's office right now, and that somebody is gonna wind up having to answer for this. But my interpretation, first of all, reading between the lines, is someone inside the circle was just sick and tired of the kind of things that were being said in the video. Would that be a fair assumption?
It could be a fair assumption. I've yet to really flesh out the motivations behind it, but whoever it was, and by the way, there is going to be more audio coming out of this. These clips aren't alone, so there is more coming. But the person obviously knew what he had, and knew that it was sort of not a good look, I'll say.
Well, yeah, I'd say. All right, so breaking news here on Rightside Radio. You're telling us to expect more of these audio/videos regarding Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed. Is that what you said?
Correct. I would definitely be on the lookout for that.
Well, okay, that's interesting. So let me ask you this: what was the context in which these statements were being made? Was he making a speech? Was he in a tight circle of friends? Was he in an office meeting that got recorded? What do we know? What's the context?
The context, from what I've been told, was just simply a conversation. It wasn't any sort of official meeting, as far as I know. Now, whether or not official business was going on, that's up for who knows. But it wasn't in any sort of official meeting. Anyone who's ever observed Mayor Reed speaking would know that he would never be so foolish as to say these things in a sort of official capacity. He is a through and through politician whenever he speaks, and he's very erudite whenever he speaks in a public setting. So this was a conversation that was taking place where obviously he was not expecting this to come out. And so, as you can see, the context in the videos, it's a little bit cut up the video, the audio is actually cut up, so the context of each exact conversation isn't exactly clear. But the reason that we ran with the story is because, regardless of the context, what he's saying in certain of these situations isn't exactly defensible.
No, it's not defensible at all. It's actually sick. So I tell you what, one more kind of generalized question before we get into a little more specifics about what you've gotten out so far. Has there been any response at all from the mayor's office? I know you guys reached out to him. As of the time you went to press, unless there's been an update, you guys didn't have anything back from them. I think the communications director said he wasn't aware of the audio or the video. And since that time, have you heard anything new?
Yeah, that's correct. I called him. I got the video from about 5 to 6 people within a 10-minute span. So
wow,
it obviously developed from that. But the video was making the rounds, and so as soon as I got the video, I linked up with my editor, and then I immediately called his Stephen Reed's press guy. It was a little later in the evening. It was around 6:30, something like that. And we chatted, and I asked him if he had seen the video. He had said no. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll send you the video. You tell me what you think. Let me know X, Y, and Z about it. And that was, I hung up the phone, sent him the video, and that was the last thing that I heard from him. I sent him a couple follow-up texts saying, hey, my deadline's midnight. It's going to run in the morning, but the deadline's midnight. Anything you can get to me by then would be great. And as of yet, I have not heard anything back from him, his chief of staff, or obviously any sort of public statement being made. And as far as I can tell, we are the only ones that are actually running it in Alabama media.
Well, is anybody picking it up in other places? Because this is the kind of thing that just, to me, just smacks of some of the hypocrisy, especially when you look at. I mean, here's a man he's a black man. He's the mayor of a major metropolitan area in the South, and he's out there saying things like, "You got a black city? That's great. You can have all the black everything you want. Guess what? You won't have green nothing." He's insulting his constituents in a big, big way, and then just goes on to say even worse from there.
Yeah, and that was probably, obviously the first video that I saw was whenever he was sort of shucking off his need for the black vote, saying, I don't have to do, it's kind of hard to quote the video without violating some sort of radio rule.
Yeah, don't do that.
He essentially said, I don't have to do any work. I have to work systemically. I'm always going to get this certain portion of the white vote, and if I get this portion of the white vote, I don't need anything else. And he sort of, again, I don't know how far apart these audio clips were, but in one he's talking about if you got a black city, that's great, you can have black everything and you won't have green nothing. But then in the later audio he sort of shucks off this quote, the descendants of Confederate soldiers actually investing in Montgomery's economy. So it's not exactly sure what he expects as far as economic development in the city, or at least where that's going to come from.
Well, he also pretty much rips a hole in the military presence, and this is a big deal because we have fought. When I was in the legislature, we were fighting to keep Maxwell Air Force Base, engaged in staying in Alabama because Montgomery is not a great location. The schools are not good. The local city leadership has not always been that great. And so we fought to get it, and we fought to enhance it. And then here he is saying, basically, he's not going to, and does he tear up one blanking conversation with the governor or the lieutenant governor about Maxwell Gunter. And he goes on to say, I don't know anybody who works out there except the people I have to meet. I don't care. And basically what he says is he doesn't care about Maxwell and Gunter. Well, that's a huge piece of the economy down there.
Yeah, I would be, I don't know the actual numbers, but I would be flabbergasted if it wasn't the largest contributor to the economy. It has to be up there. And again, part of my disappointment with the way that the audio was chopped up is that context was so missing. So I don't know what he's talking about tearing up, about a conversation with Kay Ivey or Will Ainsworth about Maxwell Gunter, but yeah, it certainly doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you to sort of disregard the effect that that's going to have on the city, because so much of the development that has come to the city would not have been so if those bases weren't there. They are gigantic parts of every aspect of Montgomery's economy. So I honestly don't know what he was talking about there or why he would even feel it was necessary to go there, but it's just not a good look.
No, it's not. And I tell you what, man, just and so can you give us any kind of hints, the kind of things we're going to see in the future video, audio that's coming out?
Not really any sort of hints. As you can see, this is something that came to me late last night, and I've been hammering away at it ever since. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people that are involved, and obviously there's some people that are afraid. There are some people that are concerned about what the repercussions for themselves will be if they're seen as being involved in this. Now, this is my job. This is what I do. But other people, they have other things that they need to look out for. I'm trying to be a little delicate with the way that I'm dealing with these situations as they develop, and so just needless to say, I'll leave it at this: that it's just more of the same. It's going to be more of the same coming.
All right, so basically it's not going to get any better for him. You don't have the next video coming out that makes all things smooth over, huh?
Yeah, there's as far as I know, there's no video where he says JK or where he says scene at the end.
Okay, all right. Well, Craig Monger, as always, man, we appreciate you and the work that you do. Thanks for getting this article put together so quick, and we'll stay tuned. And if something's to call you back in on, we'll call at you. All right.
I will certainly keep you updated, my friend. Y'all have a good one.
All right, thanks, Craig. It's Craig Monger from 1819 News talking about a story that broke this morning. His work, 1819news.com has it. It's the mayor of Montgomery in a profanity-laced series of rants about how he doesn't even need the black vote and how, white people are this and he doesn't need Maxwell and Gunner or he could even care less about them, and then dissing on the governor. This is the kind of stuff that basically is not going to help any conversation for economic development or the way forward for Montgomery as a city. Not at all. Check it out. Be prepared for the language because it's all in there. All right, Boomer, take us to a break, man. We'll do that right now. We'll come right back and keep on with home fries. Like what's going on with Tuberville? What's going on with things like, what's Tuberville saying about transgenders in the military? I got all of it. Home fries. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. It is 3:53 p.m. We're still in number 2 of the Triple Dipper of home fries. Things happening around the state of Alabama. Things you might want to know about, the folks that are in charge in your state, the things that are happening in your state. We just spent that last few minutes talking to Craig Monger from 1819 News about that crazy story down there in Montgomery with the mayor of Montgomery just showing his backside. Let's put it that way. Other things that are happening, though. So I don't know if you've heard this or not, but apparently the Department of Defense, the Biden administration, let's put it that way, the Biden administration is so determined to have abortions. I mean, if we can't kill babies, it's not a good day in the Biden administration. Because killing babies is very important to running a country. And so you have to change policy. You have to make sure that not only is abortion paid for, but it's accessible by everybody. Because if you can't kill a baby, you can't run a country. That's what I'm seeing, at least. So, well, Senator Tommy Tuberville, he takes issue with the fact. And by the way, next article right behind it, so is Congressman Mike Rogers. Takes issue with the fact that the Department of Defense has apparently instituted a new policy that will pay for service members to travel and have time off just for abortion. I kid you not. I mean, so you got sick leave, you got, family medical leave, you've got accrued leave for vacation, now you got abortion leave. So, yeah. Tommy Tuberville puts a hold on defense nominees over policies that would facilitate thousands of abortions. AL.com has the story, dated 3 days ago. It says, following the U.S. Department of Defense's trio of policies announced last Thursday that will provide assistance for service members seeking abortions, Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama announced a hold on any new DOD nominees coming before the U.S. Senate. Tuberville said he will hold all civilian flag and general officer nominations that go through Congress to secure abortion, unless Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin goes through Congress to secure the abortion access that DOD is looking for. So what's basically happened is this. There is no constitutional right to an abortion at the federal level. We also have the Hyde Amendment that does not allow for federal funds to be used to pay for abortion. And now the DOD appears to be thinking that it's got this way around that. Hey, you know what? If we can't kill a baby, it's not a good day to be in the Army. So the policies now provide transportation allowances to travel to states where reproductive care, I love it when they call it reproductive care. That's the deepest irony. That's the biggest level of hypocrisy. It's not reproductive care, it's anti-reproductive care. But in 29 days, a policy goes into effect that would allow service members to request administrative absence for non-covered, quote, reproductive health services, which includes elective abortions. And it says, this is Tuberville, he says, this is an illegal expansion of DOD authority and a gross misuse of taxpayer dollars, and I will hold it accountable. The American people want a military focus on national defense, not on facilitating a progressive political agenda. So what does a hold do? In case you're curious, basically the bottom line is if you're going to be appointed as a general officer or nominated for promotion to a general officer, flag officer in the Navy, then it typically requires congressional action. And Tuberville's hold basically means that any Defense Department nominee, and that's, by the way, I think the senior executive services, the SESs, I believe, in the civilian sector of the DOD, I think they also require consent by Congress. And, yep, usually you can do that just as a friendly matter through, unanimous consent. No, this would be putting a hold on things and requiring there to be a formal vote on the floor of the Senate before it goes any further. Mike Rogers jumped in too. By the way, we're scheduling Mike Rogers right now to hopefully be on the show with us here later this week, as well as Congressman Gary Palmer, scheduled to be on Thursday. So U.S. Representative Mike Rogers, according to a story on Yellowhammer by our buddy Yaffe from up in Huntsville, is criticizing the Biden administration over a new Department of Defense abortion policy. Mike Rogers, Thursday, says the Pentagon put out his new plan to pay for the travel of service members who seek an abortion or want to accompany their spouse who is also seeking an abortion. Rogers, who chairs the House Armed Services Committee, said it's another example of Biden putting the woke agenda over national security. Here's his quote. Today, the Biden administration chose to make the Department of Defense an abortion travel agency, over being a lethal fighting force. As I've repeatedly told the political leaders of this administration, taking this action jeopardizes congressional authorizations for our warfighters. And I'm extremely disappointed the Biden administration chose once again to placate the radical left using our military. Well, there's that. And that's just, to me, it's just a gross abuse of power. It is absolutely antithetical to good common sense. If you're stationed in a state where abortion is illegal, then the federal government shouldn't be paying you to travel to other states. This shouldn't happen. And, while I don't believe it's going to be like mass exodus of people, it's still gross. Now, this is a pro-life station. This is a pro-life show, I mean. So you know how we feel anyway. But the idea they're going to call it reproductive health care, and they're going to take the military and make it the linchpin for making sure that babies can be killed voluntarily, is just absolutely gross. All right, more stuff like that. I got home fries. We'll be back in a moment. Y'all stay tuned.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside Studios, hour number 3, talking about the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And like that dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Boomer, we just had if we keep doing home fries, all right?
Yep.
If we keep doing home fries, we just got a text from Brian from Huntsville who just gave me what a great idea. So I love Zach Brown Band. All right, Zach Brown Band's got some great stuff out there.
Oh, I like them.
All right, so you ever heard their song "Chicken Fried"? Got a little bit of chicken fried. Mm-hmm. Cold beer on a Friday night. Yeah, okay. Anyway,
yes.
Brian says we ought to consider having Zach Brown's "Chicken Fried" as the bump music for doing home fries. I just think that might be a thing. This is possible.
You know what? I'm just going to look it up right now.
Brian from Huntsville, we have to give you credit. If we can make this work, we're going to look. We have a service we're allowed to use. If there's bump music available within the subscription service that we have, we can use it without having to pay penalties and royalties and, getting in trouble. So Boomer's looking right now. Are you checking right now, Boom? You going to really? Yeah. Is it out there?
Not this one. I'm going to keep looking.
Okay, we're going to keep looking. All right, good enough. Good idea, Brian. Okay. Let me jump over to, all right, we're still in home fries. Things that are happening. Things you might want to know. Let me have a more positive story here for a minute. I hope that y'all are hearing about what's being referred to as the Asbury Revival. I wrote a piece, I did a monologue last week. I wrote an op-ed that came out today that's being published statewide. 1819 is carrying it today, and others wind up picking it up, I know by tomorrow. But this thing is crazy cool. So in 1970, just to back it up in case you haven't heard, in 1970, on the campus of Asbury College in Wilmore, Kentucky, there was a morning. It's a Christian college, very strong history, been around since 1890. You can get like 150 different degree programs, master's level degrees. It's a quality campus. It looks a lot like Sanford. If you've ever seen Sanford's campus, kind of stately. But in 1970, on a Tuesday in February of that year, students gathered for a regular weekly chapel. And man, let's just say the Holy Spirit just showed up. And they didn't leave for a week. I mean, literally, it went nonstop, people worshiping and praising in what has been referred to ever since then as the Asbury Revival. People came, it became a thing. This is before the internet. This is before text messaging. This is before social media. The word got out. It started with word of mouth, then the press began to report on it. Next thing you know, people are driving in from all over the place. I mean, I'm talking about all over the nation to be at Asbury College for what became known as the 1970 Asbury Revival. And it has ripple effects it's to this day, people have anecdotal impact stories. Like one church that I wrote about in my op-ed that had students from Asbury come and speak, and they had 50 nights straight of spontaneous services after that. Well, it's happening again. And so Asbury, and it's totally spontaneous. It wasn't planned. It just happened. I think they're in day 10 now, 10 or 11, of what is being referred to now as a second great Asbury Revival. The thing is, it's expanding to other campuses. We're hearing that Lee College near Chattanooga, another one whose name escapes me right now, and Alabama's Samford University are seeing similar events take place. So students at Samford, this story came out yesterday on AL.com, and this is probably one of the weaker write-ups. I should have gotten another version of the story. But it says students at Samford University gathered at the school's Reed Chapel on Wednesday to pray and sing, and the school then canceled Thursday classes due to weather, but the students were still meeting. And basically, they have been meeting like for, I want to say several days now at Samford. I would love to, if somebody has been there, I would love to hear it. Now, Boom, just so you know, Allie from Athens, who calls in pretty regular.
Yeah.
Allie's at Asbury right now.
She is.
She texted me over the weekend. She went up there. She said, it is unbelievable.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands of people. You can't even get inside the auditorium anymore. If you can, you're lucky. Otherwise, you're watching TVs out in the parking lot. You're in overflow buildings. She said, it's a thing, man.
Wow. My aunt actually graduated from Asbury.
So did Irene at the law firm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Wow.
So yeah, there you go. The Asbury revival, big doings, y'all. I mean, and I think it's very. In fact, Boomer and I both go to Church of the Highlands, and this past weekend, the pastor, who is not somebody who's going to step out there and say a thing until he feels like he's got a thing to say, the senior pastor of Church of the Highlands, Chris Hodges, said, we are seeing right now the beginnings of what he believes is a nationwide revival. Loving that. And I love the fact that it's spilled over to Samford University right here in Alabama.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's one for you that's a little bit better news than finding out that the mayor of Montgomery hates people and wants to cuss.
Yes.
All right, let me change gears. Tommy Tuberville is in like half of my stories today. First of all, do know this. Home fries. You might want to know Alabama's U.S. delegation, Congress and Senate, have gotten major appointments. I mean, we are so incredibly well represented in terms of the positions because right now, seniority and leadership and committee assignments, that's everything in D.C., really. Well, we have right now in the House, we have Congressman Mike Rogers is the chairman of one of the most powerful committees in Congress, the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Adderholt is the chair of one of the major subcommittees for House Appropriations. That's a big deal. Dale Strong and Barry Moore and I believe Jerry Carl have all received some pretty decent assignments to committees, and they're all junior. Terry Sewell, of course, is our only Democrat. I don't know what she's assigned to, and I don't really care because she's not looking for anything conservative. But then you got the Senate side. Of course, we have our two senators like everybody else does. We just recently saw that Katie Britt is now going to be the minority leader on the subcommittee for Homeland Security, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Working to try and get her back on the show very soon. I understand she's traveling overseas right now. But then Tommy Tuberville, story on AL Today. Alabama Today reports that Tommy Tuberville is now the ranking member of the Rural Development Energy Subcommittee of Senate Agriculture. So Senate Agriculture is a big deal for Alabama. Big deal. Agribusiness is a huge piece. I mean, I did not know this till a few years ago. Did you know the poultry industry in Alabama, just the poultry industry in Alabama is a $1 billion industry in Alabama?
$1 billion?
I'm saying. So you got row croppers, chicken farmers, cattle farmers. I mean, basically, if you're in the farming industry, agribusiness in some form or fashion, Alabama is huge. Of course, Auburn University is one of the most respected agricultural schools in the nation. But Senator Tommy Tuberville, now serving as the ranking member of the Rural Development Energy Subcommittee, and he was also appointed to two other subcommittees in ag related to commodities and food and nutrition. Anyway, that's a big deal for Alabama. So yay for us. Now, Tuberville also sits on Senate Armed Services. Here's a story from AL.com from our friend Howard Koplowitz again. Howard Koplowitz reports that U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville is among the co-sponsors of a Senate bill that would ban transgenders from serving in the U.S. military. I get it. His words are, the world is on the brink of a major conflict, and America's military must be ready to fight at a moment's notice. This says the bill would prevent anyone with a history or diagnosis of gender dysphoria from serving in the military, with limited exceptions. Here's his quote. Quote from Tuberville, now is not the time to socially experiment with our armed forces at the expense of readiness, morale, and national defense. The military maintains rigorous mental and physical requirements because our service members must be as capable and deployable as possible. Bill is also co-sponsored by Senators Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, Ted Budd, North Carolina, Mike Braun of Indiana. So, okay, I'll be honest with you. When Tuberville ran, just me talking, when Tuberville ran, I was hopeful, but he had no voting record. It wasn't like, say, pick one. It wasn't like Mo Brooks was running for Senate who had a voting record and you could see what he does when a bill's in front of him. We didn't have that with Tuberville. All we had was, campaign commercials saying, I'll be conservative. I'll be honest with you. I have yet to see him back down from a hard issue. Because being the co-sponsor, it's one thing to say you'll vote for it if it comes to the floor. It's another thing to put your name on the bill and be a co-sponsor for a bill that would literally ban transgender soldiers from serving in the military. That's somebody who's willing to stick his neck out for what he believes in. So good on you, Senator. Maybe one day I'll find something I disagree with him on, but I hadn't found it yet. But so, yeah, Tuberville is towing the line on the hard topics, and there you go. All right, Boomer, take us to a break. We'll go to the break right now. We'll come right back and wrap this section up on home fries. We got to work on this thing about the bump, man. Maybe chicken fried?
Maybe. We're going to have to work on it. I got to find something really good like that.
Maybe just some sizzling bacon. I don't know. Ooh. We'll see. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative, just plain right, saving the world one soundbite at a time. Hey, folks, I got to tell you, ZLA Solutions has been with us since the beginning of this show. That's like over a year and a half now. They've been a sponsor of this show, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. But ZLA Solutions, listen, if you're looking for a job yourself, they are one of the best around at having jobs posted that put people and jobs together. Go to their website, zlausa.com. Check it out. They've got major jobs posted all over North Alabama. You may want to see what's out there because they got some good jobs, good paying benefits. But here's the thing. If you're an employer looking to fill out the ranks of your workforce, like you need onesies and twosies, special niche skills, or a whole shift of people, ZLA Solutions, man, they do a lot of things for businesses, but staffing is still their bread and butter. And they can do it for you. They can do the recruiting, the background checks, the drug testing, blue collar, white collar, no collar. It don't matter is what I always say, and it's true. And at ZLA, they like to say, we don't make it, we make it better. That's their goal in life, is to help you make your business better. So don't just try and do it all yourself. They can help you with this. And right now, they're recruiting for a major deal with white collar high tech at Redstone Arsenal. So you might want to check it out. ZLA Solutions at zlausa.com. And do me a favor, when you talk to them, tell them you heard about it on Right Side Radio. I would appreciate it. All right, we're going to jump into the last moments here of Home Fries, some things that are happening around the state. I find this interesting. And I tell you what, I need to knuckle down on this a little bit because as I read the article and get ready for today's show, it dawns on me, you know what, there's a whole segment here on how this works. So WSFA, which is a TV station out of Montgomery, WSFA has a headline here that says, leaders say that Alabama electric vehicle infrastructure is growing. Well, there you have it. My question is, who's paying for it? If you got EV infrastructure, is the private sector jumping in with the free market, doing what it does best by finding the better mousetrap and, getting investments and, taking the risk and getting out there to, no, not quite like that. So WSFA says more and more Americans are buying electric vehicles, and now Alabama is expanding the state's electric vehicle infrastructure. A story came out just in the last few days. A guy named Michael Staley is the president of the Alabama Clean Fuels Coalition. He says basically now you got all kinds of EVs. You can get trucks, you can get small sedans, you get everything. Okay, great. I don't mind. If you want an electric vehicle, you are welcome to it. Go ye therefore. But understand this. Taxpayers shouldn't have to pay you to do it. That's a firm opinion on this show. Taxpayers should not be underwriting a segment of industry that cannot sustain itself. Well, the article points out most people charge their electric vehicles at home, but as electric vehicles become more common, the state of Alabama and President Joe Biden want to go on the charge, if you know what I'm saying. They want to make charging easier. In the State of the Union address, Biden promised the country would build 500,000 EV charging stations. See, that's the point. How many times did the government build the gas stations? How many times does the government build the quick oil change places? How many times does the government build the place where you get your air conditioner fixed or whatever? How many times does the government replace the battery in your regular car? They don't. But yet, Governor Kay Ivey just awarded $2.45 million in the last month for new charging stations along highways. I got to find out how this works. How is $2.45 million Alabama taxpayers' dollars, how's that being applied? And what I would imagine it is you're going to apply for a grant, and you're going to get it if you have a gas station or a service station or some type of property you'll dedicate to just purely electric charging stations somewhere along the interstates. It won't be in the rural areas. It won't be in places where if you live off the side of the highways a bit, you won't see it. But somewhere along the interstates, these stations, which by the way, one charging station is said to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 to $200,000 for one of the fast charging stations. $150,000 to $200,000 each. That's amazing to me. Do you know what it costs to put in a pump at a gas station? A pump. A new pump. I happen to know because I have a client who had a situation recently. A new pump cost him roughly $34,000 to have it installed, put online, and calibrated. But we're going to spend taxpayer dollars up to $200,000 each. Now, when I look at $2.45 million, so basically we're going to put in somewhere in the neighborhood of, really, not that many charging stations along the highway. Wow. So you can get maybe 10 to 12 of these things out of that $2.45 million grant. What else could we have done with $2.45 million? Probably a lot. Now, the article says it's expensive, but it's worth it. I question that. If you want an electric vehicle, fine, man. Get it. Charge it. Do what you got.
So I got something on that. So which station are they actually going to put in there? Aren't there different? There's different types. So then again, if people are trying to save money on these things, they would need to do a really slow charge. I'm guessing that's how they save money. But you don't want a slow charge at some place.
No, not when you're on a trip somewhere.
Not when you're on a trip, but then you're not saving any money, and then you're still waiting, 20, 30 minutes?
At least.
And then the cost of it is what you just said.
There's only so many boiled peanuts and pickled pig feet you can eat at a gas station while you wait for 20 or 30 minutes. And that's assuming that you get there first in line. You're not waiting behind somebody else. I don't know, man. I'm going to dig into this. I got to find out how this is going to work because it just sounds to me like an opportunity for scammage, if you know what I'm saying. Scammage, jackassery, bunch of jackwagons, all the right side terms. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. You guys stay tuned. Last half hour coming up. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the great, beautiful state of Alabama. I'm talking about way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back over to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, thrown in just for good measure. I got some callers on the line, so I'll just jump over there and take them real quick. Line 1, Mike from Huntsville. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, good, Phil. How are you?
I'm good, sir. What's on your mind?
So, wanted to let you know you were talking about the prices of those guys being $150,000 to $200,000 on a small business on Governor's Drive in the center of Huntsville.
Yeah.
I recently put in a blink station with 2 high-power chargers. Total cost?
Total.
No, for the total.
Really? These are fast chargers?
Absolutely. Fast chargers, yes, sir.
Well, that's a whole lot better than the article I was quoting a minute ago from AL.com.
Yeah, I just wanted to call. I didn't know it sounded crazy, but that might be a government thing where they're saying, oh, they're going to cost $150, and there's government waste going on, as we well know everywhere. But they're just not that expensive. And I got the best of the best. I mean, it's like a 80 amp. It's crazy. I had to have extra breakers put in and everything, and even with the breakers in and the wiring. Now, as far as you get away, when you start going 20, 30, 40 yards, the wiring gets very expensive. Obviously, you know, $3 or $4 grand. But mine was about 10 feet away, so the wiring was only about $4 grand. So the unit was about 7. Labor, it wasn't too bad. Nobody's used it, though. I did want to say, I put it in November, beginning of November.
Yeah.
Right there on Governor's Drive. I'm on Governor's Drive. I'm not going to do a shameless plug, but I'm right on Governor's and Triana. Right across from the Blue Plate Stovehouse where everybody could charge.
Yeah.
I even have it for free for 3 months. It's been free the whole time. 2 people have charged for about an hour.
2? Since November?
2. Only 2 since November.
Oh, dude, we need to get you a better return on your investment.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's crazy. And I'm like, I'm going to sell electricity now, but nobody's buying it. I guess they're not that common in town. I don't know.
I know.
It's as big of a thing as they're making it out to be.
I know exactly where you are, and I don't mind the shameless plug. I appreciate you calling in. What's the name of your business?
Ashley Garage. Work on European cars.
Outstanding. Well, hey, listen, man, I appreciate you listening to the show. That's a good heads up that I did not realize. I mean, this article is literally telling me $150,000 to $200,000, and like you said, maybe there's some government spending involved in that. But
it sounds crazy.
Hey, so how long does it take somebody to get a full charge when they pull up? If say they're about halfway down, what do they get? How long does it take?
It's usually less than an hour. It's pumping out some juice.
Dang. Okay. All right.
It'll put out, I think, a guy with a Tesla. Actually, I worked on a Tesla for someone once. They had about half a charge. I think it charged up in about 35 minutes. Pretty good.
Okay. I mean, that's still a lot longer than going and getting gas at the gas station.
It is. The reason I put it there is because I thought people might go to Stovehouse and, come over there and charge while they were over at Stovehouse. Those are booked up, but like no one's using this thing. I don't understand. I'd love to sell you some electricity. Ashley Garage.
All right. Hey, we appreciate you, Mike. Thanks much. That's awesome. Let me jump over to line 2 real quick. Brian from Huntsville. Brian, how you doing, bud?
Mighty fine. And you might want to think about putting those chargers in front of bars at night for the 5 or 6 hours that people are staying in there.
Yeah. But then you're almost encouraging people, come, drink, charge up, drive home.
Oh, but then again, I really hate me having to pay for things that philosophically that I don't believe in. And I don't like subsidizing them. So that would be one of the things.
And I think
if somebody wants to pay, if they buy a Tesla, they put it on their license tag or their receipt in their glove compartment, then let them pay the taxes on it when they get all their paperwork.
I totally agree, and that's the thing. Like Mike from Huntsville called a minute ago. I love the fact he's a small business owner who made an investment and he's trying to basically pick up an opportunity for But I do not get the whole idea of having to subsidize the industry with tax dollars. That's just
and yes, sir. And real quick, do you know what a lot of police call a stolen Tesla?
What?
An Edison. I'll leave it there. You have a good one. Goodbye.
All right, man. We'll see you. Oh, that's just funny. Wow. So yeah, okay. I totally. So I think we got. It's interesting to me. I have no problem at all with a business putting in a charging station, investing in an opportunity, seeing a piece of the market they want to try and grab. And even when the market's not that big, you had Mike from Huntsville calling in saying a whole lot cheaper than what that article's saying. They're like, wow, that's like 10 times less than what the article's saying. But he's not seeing much traffic on it right now, but it's there. And it's right there on Governor's, near Stove House across from Blue Plate. I know exactly where that. I passed by it the other day. But what I don't get is the idea of spending taxpayer dollars to get these things put in when, folks, I'm just telling you, if the free market can support it, you won't need the grants to get it done. You won't need tax dollars. If the free market will support it because the technology exists, or the technology is readily accessible, or the technology is affordable, or the technology is profitable, you won't need the government intervention. And that's where we should be. I do not mind electric vehicles. What I do mind is sort of like the vaccine mandates. I mind the mandate. I mind the idea of tax dollars paying for it. That's where we shouldn't be. Have I got another caller on the line? I just realized. Did I do? Is that Allie? Allie from Athens. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing well, and I'm calling in to talk about a different type of juice and electrical power, if you've got a couple minutes.
Are you up in Asbury still?
I have just gotten back. I'm just back in the hood, sir.
Wow. So so give us a brief, physical description of it. Lots of folks there?
Oh, my word. Yes. And I mean, I already sent you a hint and said, look, I'll commandeer your show. It takes that much time to get everything out there. But for the quick check-in, the sheer number of people, they are estimating that the town of Wilmore probably grew 3 times.
Wow.
And so the logistics of people, there were people who stood in line for hours to get into Hughes Hall. But what they did was they had 7 venues total to handle overflow. And in the most kind and godly way possible, they wouldn't kick anybody out of Hughes. They would just say, if you feel like you've gotten full and that you've gotten what you've needed, then would you please make room for family? So they would do that every couple of hours, and the people who'd been standing out in the cold would come in.
Wow.
There was church on the lawn. There were people all the way down the hill and around the corner, 4 or 5 abreast. There were little tents almost like graveside tents that were set up on the sidewalk so that people had a little bit of shelter from the cold. Nobody complained. The police said they had never been thanked and appreciated so much. And I got press credentials, which was pretty fun, and I got to go into Hughes. And seriously, you know that I love unscripted diversity more than just about anything. The man to my immediate left was from India, came to the States 7 years ago to minister to Americans. The woman to my right came from Kenya and is ministering in Houston, drove all night to get here. I saw probably 15 different license plates. There were people who had come from Cuba, from Ireland, from, I'm sorry, I'm tired and I can't remember what yet. I mean, it was raw, real, authentic, organic, amazing. And the last thing I want to say real quick is this. It is not true that the revival got shut down at all. They're trying to find ways to make simulcasting work, live streaming and that kind of thing. They had tried to stay away from live streaming because it's just not as personal and as involving.
Right.
But because of what's happening, they're doing that, and they're also trying to find another venue. So on campus, you had Hughes, the 2 other chapels, Estes and McKenna. You had the cafeteria, you had the gym, and the Baptist church next door. All of them were handling the overflow people. And so they're trying to keep it going. Their emphasis is on the youth. They're closing Hughes to kids, to people that are over 25 years old. So, yeah, you can probably file suit for ageism. No, I'm kidding. I really am. Yeah.
Hey, Allie, let me ask you this, too. I guess you're hearing by now that there's already other campuses where this is breaking out. I think it's Lee College, Sanford in Alabama, and several others are experiencing, similar results.
Yes, absolutely. It's here. It's the real deal. Yeah.
Wow.
And so if you want any more time to hear about some of the amazing testimonies, you just give me a yell, Colonel.
All right. Allie, appreciate you. Thanks so much for the firsthand reporting, and I'm glad you were there, and I look forward to hearing more later on. All right.
Welcome.
All right. My
You
friend.
are welcome. All right. Later.
All right.
Bye.
See you. Bye. That's just cool. That's just way cool. All right. Hey, listen, let's take a break, Boomer. Let's do that right now. It's a great place to go ahead and call it. I didn't even get into did I get into the, I didn't get into
You did not.
I did not. It's going to be a two-dipper day.
Yes, it is.
Somebody else wants to call in, you're welcome to it. The lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. We'll take a break. We'll be right back and wrap her up for the day. Y'all stay tuned. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Hey, folks, Just Love Coffee Cafe, 2 locations in our listening area, one on Hughes Road in Madison, the other on South Parkway in Huntsville. I'm just going to suggest to you that maybe tomorrow's the day when you take lunch and you just don't, brown bag it. You don't do the burger in the drive-thru. You blow off the usual submarine sandwich. How about this? Just Love Coffee Cafe. But Phil, it's coffee. I know, but it's more than that. Yeah, they got the great coffees, the award-winning dry roasts. They can grind them for you fresh, light, medium, dark roast coffees. They've got the treat coffee, Charlene calls them, where you can get the cappuccinos, the lattes, the espressos. But then you've also got the ability to have a meal that you would not normally get anywhere else. Why? Because it's not normal. I mean, you got sandwiches and wraps and salads and soups and all kinds of stuff with very unique style. Sandwiches cooked in waffle irons and just craziness. But let me just encourage you to check it out. Just Love Coffee Cafe. 2 locations in the listening area, one on Hughes Road in Madison, the other on South Parkway in Huntsville. And do me a favor, when you check out, tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. All right, let me do this. I got a caller on line 1. Is that Wolverine Dan? Wolverine Dan, how are you doing?
Well, my man, I'm just almost home as Decatur. Going to next destination should be Huntsville, but we left this morning from New Orleans, and we got a couple of boxes of king cake, and I got a 2-year-old. She's starting to kind of bubble over. I think she's ready for a meltdown. It's been too long in the car.
Well, so all this traveling, you on vacation or business?
Dude, vacation is my business. I'm retired. Okay? Mama's working, all right? I love her dearly. Hey, I'm telling you, man, that sounds good. I'll get some of that coffee, bring it back home, and knock down this king cake. I got a traditional one, and then I got one they call it an almond joy. It tastes like an almond joy.
That's not coffee. That's a snack.
No, dude, it's big, it's large, and it's going to be in my belly as soon as I get a little bit of that coffee from their Honest Coffee. Hey, listen, I was down there, freedom rings, man. People having a good time and spending money. I wasn't in the one part where there was a shooting. We hear a place called Magazine Street. It's the Garden District.
Yeah.
And it's more family-oriented, and a lot of parades, a lot of good times. The weather worked out really well for us. But I'm telling you, I even saw several Trump flags, man. I go, whoa. So, but you got to be careful who you talk to down there. So, I'm feeling out these people when I talk to them. I want to make sure before I get involved in, the stumbling, bumbling president. Well, I shouldn't say president. Make-believe president, Joe, who. So I don't bring it up to these people that much down there, but when I do, I got to feel them out. You know what I'm saying? All
right, man. Well, hey, we're glad you made it back, and glad you got to experience some of America. But
that's right. It's America, y'all. I'm telling you, man, ain't nothing better than where you're at right now. There's so many places to see, and we're grateful to have it. And I know what, guy. Listen, dude, they're not going to take it away from us. We're going to keep it going.
There you go. Wolverine Dan, appreciate you, man. All right.
See you.
See you. That's just good. That's just America right there. Text lines have been blowing up. I just looked over there and realized, can I even get to all of these before? Hey, I will say this. I think it was Dustin from Hazel Green earlier when we had Barry Mattson from the DA Association on, who was saying, ask him about carfentanil. And then I said on the air, I forgot to ask him about, carfentanil, which is, the text from one of our listeners. Barry must have heard me, and he texted in. He says, carfentanil is an elephant tranquilizer. It's 1,000 times stronger than fentanyl. It's also appearing on the scene, too. It's called Trank on the streets. So, wow. I mean, elephant tranquilizer on the streets. If you just want to kill yourself, wow. But anyway, 1,000 times stronger than regular fentanyl, carfentanil. Call it Trank on the streets. John from Brownsboro says, I thought we were going to hit all 3 till the callers came in. I know, man, but that's okay. I love my callers, so it's all right. We'll do a dipper tomorrow. Maybe one day, Boomer, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to pick up the day's dippers, and I'm going to add one to it, and I'm going to have a quad dipper.
Ooh, what?
That's crazy talk.
Quad dipper?
I know, it's crazy talk.
That is crazy talk.
That's crazy talk.
Okay.
Who was it? I think it was John from Huntsville at one point said, what you need to do is have mini dippers. And I could do like a half dozen mini dippers.
Then you'll really get through them all.
Yeah, it's like every 15 minutes is a dipper.
Every segment.
Yes, exactly. Mike from Huntsville, he texted in and says, and you can charge your car for free at the new Bailey Cove Public Library, courtesy of the Madison County taxpayers. That's interesting. So Bailey Cove Road Public Library, Madison County taxpayers have installed a charging station. Wow. Okay. So, yeah, Mike from Huntsville, appreciate that. He has an angry face out next to it because that just basically means taxpayers are now competing with private sector industry. That's exactly what that means. So you got, I'm not sure if it's the same Mike from Huntsville. It could be a different Mike, but we have the one guy who invested $13,000 to $14,000 of his own money to install a charging station at his business, only to have to compete now with the taxpayer-funded charging station at the library. So, wow. Government competing with the private sector. Ain't supposed to be that way. What do we got here? Monty from Huntsville. Monty from Huntsville says, on charging stations once set up, who pays for supplying the electricity? I don't know. That's a great question. See, what we're going to have to find out is, are all these grants that the governor gave out, are they going to wind up going, I would assume they're going to wind up having to be placed at a service station so a business will get a grant, at which point the business is going to pick up the electricity. But like the one for the library on Bailey Cove Road, I would guess, if that's legit, I would guess that that's being paid for by the taxpayers again. So, hey, run on down there. Get your library card. Get charged up. Read a book. Hang out. Who knew? Randall from Newmarket. How's this going to work out for Alabama taxes for roads? Is there a gas tax for state and county roads? There is a gas tax for state and county roads. Yes, there is. The division of the gas tax has a formula, and they break it down by municipals, county governments, and state. So, yeah, there's that. I'm not sure how that's going to work out for charging stations, but there you go. Joe Gunn from Huntsville. Joe Gunn says, Governor Ivey, he has a derogatory name for her, but Governor Ivey giving out $2 million for charging stations shows how much she's in Biden's pocket. It's embarrassing for the state that okay, there you go. All right. He just doesn't have much love for Governor Ivey. I won't read the rest of it. Jack from Vinemont. Jack from Coleman. Let all the people that want EVs, let them pay for the charging stations. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. All right, listen, we got a ton more we're not going to get to today, but I'll just tell you right now, best audience in the world, and you guys are the reason why this show exists. So appreciate you. JT from Lacey Springs, by the way, says Quad Dipper. That's be a show going into 4 hours. We'll see, JT. You and John keep us on our toes. We'll keep working. And anyway, tomorrow, Triple Dipper. We'll see how it goes. I know I got a great guest going to be in studio tomorrow. You're going to want to hear that interview. All right, folks. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. You guys have an amazing night. We'll see you tomorrow.